Welcome back to the Adam Schefter podcast. It is training camp time. On Tuesday, 26 of the 32 teams reported for work. The only two teams not in training camp, the Atlanta Falcons and the Pittsburgh Steelers, will report to work on Wednesday, and the NFL season officially will be off and running. To break it all down, to offer further insight, we welcome in my friend, the co-host of the Pat McAfee Show, Ty Schmit, the host of this week's Weekly Six Pack.
Thank you very much, Shefty. I got to tell you, I'm excited. I'm very excited. Listen, I know we have a long way to go before we actually have meaningful football, but with training camps opening up, it feels like the NFL world is back in motion. We don't have to really kind of grasp at straws for what we're going to find out. All the pertinent things we need to know are going to get figured out relatively soon here, we'd think. So I'm in a good place today. I don't know about you.
Well, I can tell you this, Ty. On Saturday, my iPhone began acting up for the third straight day. It was 3 straight days, and I'm like, I can't take it anymore. So I brought my iPhone into Apple, and they're like, we could try to replace some of the software. They ran diagnostic tests on the hardware. The hardware seemed to be okay. They're like, we could just swap it out, do an exchange here. You pay some extra money. I'm like, let's just do that. I've done that. But what I didn't realize is I knew it, but I didn't know it. All the work that comes along when you change phones with getting into all these apps and reconfigure. Like, I went to go set my alarm in the morning, just hit the switch, like, okay, 5:30 a.m., right? Like, we're getting up. Well, there's no alarm set. I got to reprogram everything. All my contacts from ESPN have not synced up. So there have been a couple of times this morning where I needed to reach somebody, and I go to my phone to reach that person. They're not even listed in my contacts. I don't have numbers memorized. This isn't like it was when we didn't have cell phones. I don't have any numbers written down or memorized. So now I'm operating without phone numbers of people that I need to speak to. I'm trying to get my phone fixed. I'm on the phone with ESPN's tech people. It's amazing how reliant we are on technology and how vulnerable we feel when it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's scary, especially a guy like you. I mean, that is a massive, massive piece of your job. So, hey, little adversity to kind of start the season here with training camps coming back. Schefter, you mentioned it in the open there. Let's get right to it. Let's jump into topic number 1 of this week's Six Pack. Training camps are officially open by, tomorrow. After this has come out, we should have every team reported. What does that mean to you?
Ty, it means summer is over. That's the first thing it means, right? Like, somebody just texted me about 10 minutes ago. They go, how was your summer? And I said, over. Okay, it's onwards because everybody's in camp. Anything could happen any day. That's always the way it is in the National Football League. But now you've got everybody in attendance. You've got practices beginning. You've got players who have wanted new contracts getting signed to new deals. You've got players who aren't in camp who could wind up getting a new deal or not and be in the headlines at any time. There could be trades that are made. There could be players, hopefully not, who get injured during practice. There's so many things that could happen. In the hour leading up to this particular podcast, you just think about all the things that unfolded within the last hour. Oh, Matthew Stafford's got back soreness. He's not going to be practicing much the first 5 days of camp. Soreness, Matthew Stafford. That's interesting. The 49ers say that Jawan Jennings didn't request a trade. So clearly, Jawan Jennings must be comfortable with where he's at within the organization with whatever conversations have occurred with the franchise. We've heard the 49ers GM, John Lynch, come out and say that Brandon Ayuk is nowhere close to having a timeline for his return from a knee injury. So you've got like these storylines that are coming out of nowhere. How about the Honey Badger announcing his retirement right before we start taping this? 3-time All-Pro, was an All-American at LSU, played tremendously, won a Super Bowl, a fan favorite, great career, retired, not playing in the NFL. Again, it's flying right now. There's a lot going on in the league. And once training camp starts, It means it's all on until the Super Bowl is played this year in Santa Clara, California in mid February. And we're back to having that regular football schedule that so many people love, that's so relentless, that we're now on the clock. Here we go. And like I said, by the end of Wednesday, as we tape this Tuesday, all 32 teams will be in training camp. And guess what? A week from Saturday, the Detroit Lions and Los Angeles Chargers in the Hall of Fame game. Now, I know we're not getting Jared Goff versus Justin Herbert. I know it'll be third and fourth stringers, but we got football, an NFL preseason game a week from Saturday.
Yeah, official logos on the field, which is always a comforting feeling. And I think if you're a fan, this time is like, we always talk about it through the draft, but hope springs again, and at this point, you're really just holding your breath and hoping that, hey, our quarterback gets it through camp okay and nothing happens, or none of our star players have any hiccups or issues, injury wise, and we can just kind of see what we have and also get to the season somewhat healthy. That's, that's all we're looking for. So I think you're right. This is a very exciting time. You mentioned potential deals getting done. Let's move on to topic number 2 of this week's Six Pack. Where are the Cowboys at with Micah Parsons and his new deal? We heard Jerry's comments that were just, typical Jerry, I guess you could say. Just not what you expected, I suppose. And then J.J. Watt, comments on it on Twitter. Micah Parsons retweets it. That situation doesn't look great. Where are we at on Micah Parsons and a potential new deal?
I think that there's some frustration here from both sides. I think this is a situation where you got Micah Parsons' representation not feeling like there have been any offers. You've got the conversations that I believe that people around the league talked about that were well along with Jerry Jones and Micah Parsons on their own. Remember that at the owners' meetings when Jerry sounded very optimistic that something was going to get done, and he said he wasn't worried about the agent, and he essentially didn't bring up Micah Parsons' agent, David Mulgeta. I think there are people that think that there were constructive, productive, positive talks between Jerry Jones and Micah Parsons that basically almost resulted in a deal. And then once the agent was brought in, I think those talks stopped, so to speak. So I think that the Cowboys probably felt at one point in time that they were getting a deal done with Micah Parsons. I think the agents felt like they were not a part of the process and that Cowboys might have been going around them. And so I think Dallas has done some deals like that in the past with the best of the best players. And Micah Parsons certainly is one of those players. So now I think that there might be a reset that needs to be hit here before they can move forward and get a deal done, because the Dallas Cowboys have spoken about extensions with other players more recently than they have with Micah Parsons. So you could hear about an extension with another Cowboy before there's one for Micah Parsons. And I just think it's one of those situations that threatens to drag on when at one point in time it looked like it could be getting closer to the finish line, and now it isn't, and now it's nowhere, and now we'll see if they can get talks back going again to conclude a deal and get a deal in place that will make Micah Parsons the highest paid defensive player in the game. But right now, nowhere. Right now, nowhere, Ty.
So even with both sides being, maybe just a little agitated with the other, in your mind, like ultimately there's no concern, right? The timetable may have changed a little bit, but Micah Parsons is going to be a Cowboy. There's no way Jerry Jones is not going to pay this guy. We've kind of seen this same thing play out a little bit with Dak and CD Lamb very recently. So, I mean, there's no world in your mind where Micah Parsons is playing in a different uniform, is there?
Well, I don't see that right now. But these things always take funny twists and turns. Today, going into the season, I think Mike is going to be in Dallas. I don't think they're looking to deal him. But again, at one point in time, the Las Vegas Raiders wanted to keep Khalil Mack. No intention of trading. And things happen. I don't think it's going to happen. But until there's a contract extension, there's not. And anything at that point in time is possible.
Let's move to topic number 3 of this week's six pack. We've seen everything going on with Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals. This has been happening since the Super Bowl, very publicly, and before that for a long time. We heard Mike Brown's comments on the whole situation, and then Trey Hendrickson this morning posts an Instagram, of him in Florida. He's not there in Cincinnati. What's going on with Trey Hendrickson?
Well, first of all, I didn't hear Mike Brown's comments until I was sitting on First Take today. And he's like, it's not so easy to deal with him. And I thought to myself, I cannot believe that an owner just said that. Now, I know we've talked an awful lot about what Jerry Jones said this week and how it related to Micah Parsons. I thought this was more disrespectful than what Jerry Jones said. And yes, Mike Brown did come out and say, we want him here, we want to give him a raise. But he's like, he's not so easy to work with. Something to that. And I was like, I heard it and I was like, whoa. Because guess what? It would be the same feeling on the other side for Trey Hendrickson about the Bengals. They're not easy to work with. So both sides clearly not happy with the other. And that explains why on Monday night, Trey Hendrickson set out to drive from Cincinnati to Jacksonville. Went through Chattanooga, Knoxville, Atlanta. We were tracking him on the GPS, the Santa finder that we use. Like, we had the Trey Hendrickson finder here. And he arrived in Jacksonville safely, which is good for him, bad for the Bengals. So he did make a lot of progress. But the progress he made was from Cincinnati to Jacksonville, not on a long-term contract extension with the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, the problem here is that the two sides basically were in agreement on the terms over 2 years. The issue was one of those terms, and that was the guaranteed money. They are way apart on the guaranteed money of the deal. If we look at the other premium pass rushers that have been paid this offseason, and I think everybody could agree that Trey Hendrickson clearly is one of those premium pass rushers, having led the NFL in sacks for the last 2 years, having led the NFL in sacks last season. The Bengals have offered him guaranteed money for only 1 year. 1 year. Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, guaranteed money for 3 years. The Bengals are offering Trey Hendrickson guaranteed money for 1 year. And therein, Ty, is your issue. And therein is the reason that Trey Hendrickson, as we record this, is in Florida, away from his teammates, not in Cincinnati, with the rest of the Bengals that have reported to training camp. So now the Bengals are opening camp, and there's no Trey Hendrickson, and there's no Shamar Stewart. Now, that's a different situation surrounding the language in his contract, and there are various viewpoints about what's right and what's wrong there. But the fact of the matter, beyond dispute, is that the Bengals are without their best defensive player, and they are without their first-round draft pick on the defensive side of the football. That is not an ideal way to open training camp, and it's not ideal for a team that has started so slowly in recent years. Now, again, as we record this on Tuesday, I'd like to think that somehow, some way, the Cowboys and Micah Parsons will figure it out. The Commanders and Terry McLaurin will figure it out. And hopefully the Bengals and Trey Hendrickson will figure it out. But the Bengals and Trey Hendrickson have been at this for the better part of 2 off seasons. And there has not been much progress at all. At all. So I spoke to Trey on Monday night for a while. And he certainly sounded dug in to me. He did not sound like a man who's going to waver and vacillate on what he said, which is that he will not play football again under his existing contract. He will not come in for the $16.5 million that is currently left on the 1 year of his deal. I don't know what compromise the two sides come up with. I don't know how they do this, but I do not believe we will see Trey Hendrickson play football again. I believe him when he says that, having listened to him. And I believe that he's not happy. He's worked up, just like Mike Brown doesn't enjoy dealing with Trey Hendrickson and his agent. So we've got a lot of people that are not happy with each other here, and it shows no signs of ending anytime soon. Now, saying that, Ty, these things can turn around like that, okay?
True.
I got it. But right now, no bueno. No bueno.
Well, and it's interesting because that doesn't really seem, given what we know about the Bengals and how they operate, it doesn't seem like if they're dug in as well that they're all of a sudden one night just going to be like, hey, okay, we'll come meet you
No,
on your.
they are very very. I mean, stubborn, right? Like they have what they have. They offer what they offer. They don't. They're not one of these teams that's trying to come up with creative, imaginative ways to find workarounds for what they've already offered.
Exactly, and especially not in off seasons when they've paid their two top receivers as well, and all that kind of stuff. Where we stand today, I mean, I know when we talked about this post Super Bowl and then kind of the months right after that, the idea that he was going to get traded was kind of just like a no, like probably not. They're going to figure something out. Do you feel like there's a much higher chance that he is dealt I mean, and is playing for a new team come next
Well,
year?
I think this, Ty, that for them to trade him, they'd have to accept the fact that he's not going to play for them again, which he will not do, I don't believe, under this current deal. So they'd have to be willing to take pennies on the dollar to get something back in return. And he would have to be willing to be traded to a team, whatever team, without that new contract. Now, it's possible they could give a team permission to work out a new deal with him, but most teams have spent most of the money that they were planning for this season. So you don't want to be doing this in late July. You want to be doing this in late February and early March. So, not that it can't be done, it can, but it just makes it that much more challenging. I think it becomes difficult to trade him. They're not even there, and that's also not like the Bengals, although
Right.
they did once trade Carson Palmer when he sat out to the Raiders. So maybe if Trey Hendrickson is sitting all year, and maybe there's another deal right before the deadline. Like, there's so much that's going to happen. All I can say is where we are today on July 22nd, as we record this in the afternoon. He's not happy. They're not happy. They're not close. They're offering 1 year of guaranteed money. He is adamant that he is not taking 1 year of guaranteed money. And that's where we're at.
Okay, so that'll be something to keep an eye on. Obviously, we've been keeping an eye on that all off season, but it doesn't seem like things are really getting any better. So, I okay, that's very interesting. That's some good insight there. Let's move on to topic number 4 of this week's six pack. We just saw recently that Will Levis. You reported Will Levis is going to be out for the entire season. He underwent shoulder surgery. With that being said, I don't think he was the plan to start anyway, given everything we've heard about Cam Ward. What do you know, or what do kind of the general public? What do we know about Cam Ward so far?
Here's the amazing part about that, Ty. I don't know the last time that there was a number one pick that played quarterback that generated less conversation and speculation than Cam Ward. And here we have a situation this week where the man that might have, and I don't think so, but might have challenged him for the starting job this summer, Will Levis, announced basically that he's going to undergo season ending right shoulder surgery for an injury that he suffered last year. And so now Cam Ward is thrust into the spotlight, and still there's not a lot of conversation about him, it seems like. The only backups they have in Tennessee right now are Brandon Allen and Tim Boyle. Both, with all due respect, those guys have had journeyman type of careers, and they are widely respected where they've been. But I don't see Brandon Allen or Tim Boyle unseating Cam Ward for the starting job on opening day against the Denver Broncos. And we heard the Titans general manager Mike Borgonzi come out this week and say they're not planning right now to add another quarterback to their roster. So you know what that means? It means Cam Ward versus the Denver Broncos in week 1. And that's going to be fun to watch because Cam Ward, I think, has the chance to be a great quarterback. Now, some of these rookie quarterbacks, do you remember Cam Newton's very first NFL game? He came out against Arizona and lit him up.
Like
Lit him up.
400 plus yards or
It's
something.
unbelievable. Robert Griffin III against the Saints when people weren't expecting anything. Went into New Orleans and lit him up. Everybody's going to be expecting Denver's defense to be done. Is Cam Ward going to be so good that he comes out and shocks everybody the way Cam Newton and RG3 once did? Or is it going to be one of those tough learning days against a tough Denver defense? But the fact of the matter is, Will Levis's shoulder surgery, to me, that just cemented it. Cam Ward, starting opening day. More conversation that we haven't had about the number one overall pick.
I mean, at the very least, I think it makes the Titans a lot more interesting. I mean, if Will Levis is starting at quarterback, no disrespect to him, but I don't think we're expecting a whole lot from the Titans. With Cam Ward starting, it's at least an unknown, and everyone remembers how electric and how exciting he was at Miami. And I think we talk a lot about, rookie QBs not playing early because teams don't want them to struggle and then have their confidence just get crushed right away. And then, maybe they're not the same guy. I think if there's one thing he definitely isn't lacking, like he's supremely confident in himself. So if you can get him out there for the whole season when there aren't really any expectations for the Titans and he can get a whole bunch of reps, who knows? Maybe the Titans can. I mean, that's not the toughest division in the world. Maybe they can make a little noise and kind of do what the Commanders did last year and come out of nowhere with a rookie quarterback and kind of shock everybody in the league. I don't think that's the craziest thing.
But again, the one thing that I feel confident in is there's going to be a lot more conversation about Cam Ward the closer we get to the regular season.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and for good reason. He never really got his moment draft night anyway, so. I'll be excited to see what comes of that conversation whenever it comes out.
He has his chance to get his moment on opening day, Ty.
Exactly. So, if it were up to him, I'm sure he's okay with that. Let's go from one rookie quarterback, Shefty, to another in topic 5 of this week's six pack. What have you seen so far? What have you heard from the rookie QBs in Cleveland?
Well, look, the Browns have 4 QBs, viable QBs that we know about for opening day. I don't include Deshaun Watson in that mix, right? So Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett are the veterans. Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, the rookies. And now they go to camp and battle for the starting job. I think if you talk to people around the league, most people believe that one of the veterans will likely prevail and win that starting job. I think that seems to be the prevalent thought process when you speak to teams around the league. I think one of the interesting questions is I always thought the Browns would keep 3 quarterbacks, and I still think that that is the most likely scenario, 3. But if both veterans are impressive and both rookies are impressive, quarterbacks in this league are currency. And there's a world in which I think it's possible that the Cleveland Browns could decide to keep 4 quarterbacks on their opening day 53-man roster. Again, not the likeliest scenario, but not out of the question at this point in time. And if I were to bet $1 today on who's going to be the starting quarterback, I go with Joe Flacco. He's been in the city before. He knows Kevin Stefanski's offense. Stefanski knows him. He's a trusted veteran. He's won a Super Bowl. He's won Super Bowl MVP. People know what he's like. Joe Flacco is reliable. But maybe Kenny Pickett goes in and lights it up in training camp. It's hard for me to see one of those 2 rookies, Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders, storming out of the gate and taking hold of that starting quarterback job. Again, it could happen. But they're going to have to light it up this summer, and they're going to have to outplay 2 veterans, which I don't think is going to be easy to do. But the Cleveland Browns quarterback room, that'll be as interesting a unit as there is to the public as any room in the National Football League. Can you think of a more compelling position group? Yes, like we've got the great Vikings wide receivers. We've got the great Eagles defensive line.
D-line, yeah.
O-line. Like, there are great units. But is there a more interesting unit this summer than Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders, and Deshaun Watson? No, right?
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. So, again, some tremendous units, some tremendous positional groups. But the Cleveland Browns have the most interesting setup going right now.
Yeah, and I mean, I would agree too with your take on the Flacco situation. It's tough not to imagine him starting, and when you don't look at the Browns drafting, like a guy like Baker, a number 1 overall pick who we kind of assumed was going to play, for whatever reason, they just seem like one of those franchises where if Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders were to be the starter and things start going bad, I feel like that's like a black hole that sometimes those guys never get out of. And I don't know if it's something with Cleveland and like the franchise as a whole, but it would make a lot more sense to see what they have with Flacco, considering how well he played with Stefanski. And, who knows, by the end of the first month of the season, maybe they're 3-1 or 2-2, and it's like, okay, we have a lot to play for here, other than Shador or Dylan Gabriel just getting their head bashed in for a month straight, and you're 0-4, and you're already thinking about like, boy, we may have mismanaged that. So I agree, that's very interesting. We're definitely going to be talking about the Browns QB room quite a bit this year, I would assume. So yeah, that'll be an interesting thing to keep our eyes on. Let's move on to the sixth and final topic of this week's Six Pack Shefty. How about the Jets? We just mentioned the Browns, one of those kind of franchises who perennially seems like they get it wrong, or at least they have in, the last couple decades. How about the Jets making what seems like all the right moves right now?
Well, while we're talking about contractual showdowns and stalemates in Dallas and Cincinnati and Washington, the New York Jets go out and identify two players they want to keep at their core. Sauce Gardner, the cornerback, Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver, get both signed to long-term contracts. It's what you want to do. You want to lock in your guys as early as you can. This is the first off season in which both players are eligible for a new deal. Both have new deals. And again, I think this is just part of what's going on with the New York Jets, where all of a sudden everything is new with the New York Jets. We've got new contracts for their young standout players. We've got a new quarterback in Justin Fields. We've got a new head coach in Aaron Glenn. We got a new general manager in Darren Muji. We even have a new locker room that
Beautiful.
they redid and unveiled on Tuesday, and it looked beautiful. It looked unlike many of the other locker rooms. Like, you walk in there, you're like, this is a place I want to be. And I would think that that's going to be a drawing card for players to spend more time around the facility and in the locker room, because everything's new. Now, I don't know that there are many teams that have had more new beginnings and more new coaches and more new fresh faces than the New York Jets, but this one feels like they've got a chance to breathe some life into that franchise. This one feels like they've got a reason to give some hope to their fans. Now, we'll see how everybody turns out and how it fares, but man, they're spending some money on players, on the locker room, on their quarterbacks. Like, they're right now, and we'll see if what they're doing ultimately pays off, Ty.
And I think it helps too that you don't have Rodgers there anymore, so you don't have the unrealistic expectations going into the season. That, I mean, granted, I'm not from that area. I'm not a Jets fan, but I think the Jets fans I do know, it was kind of just like, what are we doing to ourselves? We get Rodgers, and then all of a sudden we expect to win a Super Bowl. Like, has anyone paid any attention to the history of this franchise? Like, that was just, we're living in La La Land kind of, and rightfully so. It was super exciting, but I think you're right. Like, this restart, or however you want to phrase it.
Good word.
Yeah, it does feel different. It really does. And Justin Fields being there, like, I still don't know if we've scratched the surface of what he can be when he's in a new situation and he's the guy. He obviously played with Garrett Wilson in college, and then everyone always talks about how good their defense is, and your head coach is a defensive guy. So I think if you're a Jets fan, you're maybe even feeling a little bit better about where they're at right now than you did in the last 2 years, because you knew it was Super Bowl or bust.
Ty, remember how we started this podcast by saying like things are just flying in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So while we're doing this and while you're answering that question, just got a little update. Doesn't seem like Micah Parsons is practicing. Seems like he's not going through practice. So that seems like all of a sudden that might be an issue this summer. And as you're answering your question, just got a text here just now, fresh off the presses. If we had ESPN breaking news music, we could chime it in right now. But Washington wide receiver Terry McLaurin not present for the Commanders' conditioning test. That marks really the unofficial start of training camp. All other players present and accounted for. So Terry McLaurin is initially a no-show for the start of training camp. So we've got no McLaurin, no Hendrickson. The Honey Badger just retired. Looks like Micah Parsons isn't practicing. And this has all transpired in the course of the taping of this podcast. Can you imagine what's going to happen the rest of the day, the rest of the week, the rest of the month, the rest of the season. Can you imagine all the storylines that are sitting out there in front of us? Maybe we'll get some of the contacts in my iPhone restored so that I can call and get even more information.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm looking forward to it. I'm gonna be keeping an eye on your Twitter account. God willing, you get that figured out, and your phone and your computer and everything else you need to use to do your job quits trying to sabotage you.
Yeah, and one other thing before we go, I just want to let you know I was in Michigan on Monday. I did your show, Pat show Monday, and one thing I didn't get to share that I want to just point out, I got the chance to meet Bryce Underwood, the heralded Michigan quarterback, and we were talking on Monday before we went out in this golf outing. And neither here nor there, but he was the number one recruit in the country. First time I had met him, and it was amazing to me. Bryce Underwood right now is 17 years old. 17. He was telling me that he's turning 18 on August 19th. Again, neither here nor there, but I'm thinking to myself, wow, my school and its tremendous fan base have so many hopes and expectations for this quarterback who just happens to be 1 year older than my daughter. Actually, he's not even 1 year. He turned 17 in August. My daughter turned 17 in October. So my daughter, I just realized this is really, I don't know, 6 or so weeks younger than Bryce Underwood. And Bryce Underwood is being counted on to elevate the Michigan team. Anyway, neither here nor there. 17 years old.
Crazy.
Holy, not even, like crazy to me. Actually, no. No, my daughter turns 17. He's turning 18. So he's a year. He's a year and 6 weeks older than mine. Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. But not a lot. But not a lot. That's crazy.
Yeah, no, I'm getting into that same boat. You know, the older I get, and it's like you're rooting for people, and it's like, man, these guys who I'm fawning over, these players are, some of them are damn near 20 years younger than me. It's wild.
20?
It's kind of scary.
20?
Yeah,
Oh my God, I'm not even
couple
going
of
to tell
them.
you all the things that make me feel. All
No,
right.
I know. I never thought I'd be in that position, but here we are.
Oh, guess what? We all get there, Ty.
Yep.
Welcome. Welcome. All right. Want to thank you for the hosting the weekly six pack. Want to thank our listeners for tuning in to another weekly six pack. Want to thank our great producer, Christina Buswell, Ben Smith, Rob Lorenzo, all the people that contributed to this effort. We'll be back in this spot next week to further break down all these continuing storylines that continue to bubble to the surface in what is now training camp, with every team being in training camp on Wednesday. Until then, have a great week, everybody. Be well and stay safe.